Ladies and gentlemen, there is one boundary, just one, that doesn't just change how a man treats you, it changes how he feels you. It's the boundary that makes him stop in his tracks, question the way he's been showing up, and realize he is standing in front of a woman he cannot replace. A boundary so powerful that it makes him step into the best version of himself, not because you demanded it, but because he knows he'll lose something extraordinary if he doesn't. This isn't a tactic, it isn't a game. It's the one shift that makes a man fall in love, not quickly but forever. When people talk about love, they often imagine grand gestures, dramatic moments, or the perfect spark that magically pulls two people together. But real, lasting love, love that deepens instead of fades, doesn't grow from intensity, it grows from clarity. And there is one boundary that transforms everything. It's the boundary that separates those who merely attract attention from those who inspire devotion. It's the boundary that makes a man feel something rare, something he can't easily find anywhere else. It's the boundary that makes him fall in love forever. It is the boundary of self-respect, not the kind that's loud or performative, not the kind that posts quotes on social media but collapses the moment someone shows interest. I'm talking about the kind of self-respect that quietly radiates from a woman who knows her value so deeply that she would rather be alone than be half-loved. The kind that tells a man, without a single dramatic speech, I will not abandon myself to keep a relationship alive. This boundary changes everything because it forces him to rise. It forces him to decide whether he wants to meet you at the level of who you truly are, or whether he wants to settle for the version of himself that keeps relationships shallow. It's the boundary that says, I don't chase clarity. I don't chase effort. I don't chase consistency. If it's not offered freely, I move differently. A woman with this kind of boundary carries herself in a way that makes a man feel like he's stepping into something meaningful. He can sense that your world is full, not empty. He can feel that you are choosing him, not clinging to him. Men fall in love not when they feel needed. They fall in love when they feel chosen by someone who doesn't need them at all. Someone whose presence enhances their life, not fills a void. Someone whose energy doesn't suffocate but inspires. Someone whose time feels like an honor, not an obligation. This boundary of self-respect shows up in small, powerful moments. It's in the way you respond when he gives you mixed signals. Instead of arguing, instead of trying to prove your worth, instead of waiting around hoping he figures himself out, you simply match his energy. You mirror his clarity. You say, if you're uncertain, take your time. I'm not waiting in the doorway while you make up your mind. You don't punish him. You don't lecture him. You simply step back and protect your peace. He may have met beautiful women. He may have met kind women. But very few men ever meet a woman who doesn't fear losing them. That is what makes him pause. That is what makes him reevaluate his own vulnerability. That is what makes him say, if I don't give this woman the best of me, someone else will, and I'll lose the chance to experience her completely. This boundary makes you unforgettable because it sets the tone for every interaction. He learns quickly that he cannot take shortcuts with you. He cannot text you at midnight after disappearing for 2 days and expect to be welcomed warmly. He cannot give you crumbs of attention and expect you to build a feast out of them. He cannot treat you like an option and expect you to behave like a prize. Your self-respect teaches him how to love you. It shows him that your time is valuable. It shows him that your heart is not a playground. It shows him that if he wants access to your deeper world, your loyalty, your softness, your devotion, he must earn it through consistent effort, through integrity, through presence, through the kind of actions that reveal his character, not just his charm. And when a man realizes that your boundary isn't a game, isn't manipulation, isn't some tactic meant to trap him, but an authentic standard you live by, something shifts inside him. He begins to understand that loving you requires real investment. And instead of feeling intimidated, a good man will step up. Because men respect what they work for. They value what they grow. They protect what they fear losing. This boundary also protects you from becoming emotionally bankrupt. It prevents you from pouring into someone who hasn't earned a place in your heart. It stops you from negotiating with bare minimum behavior. It helps you avoid those exhausting cycles of chasing, explaining, convincing, and trying to hold together something he's not even fully committed to. Instead, it guides you toward alignment, toward peace, toward relationships where effort is mutual, feelings are honored, and communication flows without resistance. It allows you to attract a man whose love feels steady, not chaotic, whose energy feels grounding, not draining, whose presence feels like partnership, not emotional gambling. Self-respect is also magnetic. It makes your confidence feel natural instead of forced. It makes your boundaries feel like part of your identity, not a wall. It makes you attractive in a way that stands out, especially in a world where many people settle because they fear being alone. You show him a different way, one where solitude isn't punishment but empowerment, one where silence isn't tension but clarity, one where you choose peace over drama, alignment over confusion, and love over possession. A man falls in love forever when he sees a woman who refuses to abandon herself even for him, when he realizes that your boundary is not meant to push him away but to invite him to rise to the level of the relationship you both deserve. When he feels that being with you demands the best version of himself, when he understands that if he wants a place in your story, he must show up as a co-author, not a visitor. This boundary reshapes the way he views you. It makes you stand out among everyone who allowed treatment that you simply wouldn't accept. It makes him recognize that you are not replaceable, because most people do not love themselves enough to require love in return. Most people give their hearts away for free. You do not. You give access slowly. You allow closeness gradually. You reveal your layers intentionally. You show emotion without losing your center. And that combination, warmth without self-abandonment, is rare. It is irresistible. What makes a man fall in love forever is not perfection. It is not always being agreeable. It is not saying yes when you want to say no. It is not accommodating every mood or accepting every excuse. What makes him fall in love forever is the way you love yourself out loud, the way you prioritize your emotional well-being, the way you refuse to shrink to make someone comfortable, the way you choose authenticity even when it's difficult, the way your boundaries act like a compass, guiding both of you toward the kind of connection that grows instead of fades. And the more consistently you honor that boundary, the more clearly he sees the value of being with you, not because you force him to see it, but because he feels it. He feels the difference between a woman who fears losing him and a woman who fears losing herself. He feels the difference between conditional affection and genuine emotional maturity. He feels the difference between someone who wants his attention and someone who wants a real partnership. That boundary becomes the line between temporary interest and lifelong devotion. It becomes the reason he shows up, the reason he invests, the reason he chooses you, not out of fear, not out of convenience, but out of admiration, out of respect, out of love that deepens because you never stop choosing yourself. And when you hold that level of self-respect long enough, something even more powerful happens. He begins to realize that your presence is not guaranteed, not because you're cold or distant, but because you are someone who honors your own life. You have dreams that don't wait. You have standards that don't bend. You have a future that you are actively building with or without him. And that awareness creates a level of admiration he can't shake. He starts paying attention in ways he never has before. He begins to measure his actions, not because you demand it, but because he wants to be deserving of the access he's been given. He knows you don't tolerate inconsistency disguised as passion. He knows you don't confuse chaos with chemistry. He knows he can't impress you with quick highs that fade just as quickly. You need steadiness, depth, intent. And the more he learns about you, the more he realizes that loving you isn't about keeping you, it's about rising to the level of someone worthy of standing beside you. This is where the shift happens in his mind. He begins to understand that your boundary is not a barrier to love. It's the very thing that makes love possible. It creates a container where trust can grow, where vulnerability becomes safe, where effort becomes meaningful. It removes all the noise, all the games, all the uncertainty. It allows the relationship to breathe, to expand, to deepen without either person losing themselves in the process. And to a man who is ready, that clarity feels like a gift. He finds himself wanting to show up earlier, stay longer, listen more deeply. He becomes more intentional, not because he fears losing you, but because he's inspired by the way you show up for yourself. You demonstrate what healthy love looks like by the way you love your own life. You show him how powerful emotional maturity is by refusing to settle for scraps of connection. You teach him, without ever trying to teach, that love thrives where respect thrives first. Your boundary makes him fall in love in a way he didn't expect, slowly, surely, with a sense of awe. Because he sees that you are not trying to fit into his life, you are inviting him to co-create something with you. But if he doesn't meet you there, you won't wait, you won't beg, you won't chase. And that is exactly why he starts to see you as someone he can build a future with. He realizes that being with you would never feel like losing freedom. It would feel like gaining purpose. Because you're not asking him to complete you, you're asking him to join you. You're asking him to contribute, to grow, to evolve. You're asking him to bring something to the table besides attraction or validation or temporary excitement. You're asking for presence, for honesty, for emotional effort. And deep down, most men crave the chance to rise to that level when they meet the right woman. This boundary also forces him to face himself. He can't hide behind excuses anymore. He can't blame the past or his fears or his uncertainty. He can't pretend he doesn't know what you deserve because you've shown him in every interaction. He knows that if he wants to be part of your world, he must deal with his own internal resistance. He must acknowledge the ways he holds himself back. He must confront the old stories that tell him love is risky or relationships are traps. He must choose growth, not comfort. And when a man makes that choice, for himself and for the chance to be with you, it changes everything. It means he sees you not as a casual connection, but as a catalyst, as someone who challenges him without shaming him, as someone whose standards elevate him instead of diminishing him, as someone who lights a fire in him to become more than he was yesterday. Your boundary becomes the foundation of the love he feels. It becomes the reason he wants to protect your heart. It becomes the reason he wants to show up as his best self. It becomes the reason he realizes that commitment isn't something to fear. It's something to treasure when it's with the right person. And the right person for a man who is ready for real love is always the woman who respects herself. This is why your boundary matters even more than your beauty, your charm, your kindness, or your connection. Because beauty can be admired from afar. Charm can be enjoyed in the moment. Kindness can be appreciated by anyone. Connection can be felt with many. But a woman who truly honors her value, who refuses to lose herself in love, that is rare. That is unforgettable. That is the one he cannot replace. Your self-respect becomes the rhythm of the relationship. It determines the pace at which things move. It shapes the way he treats you, the way he communicates, the way he invests. It inspires him to be consistent, because he knows consistency is the only language you understand. It inspires him to be thoughtful because he knows you don't respond to empty words. It inspires him to be emotionally available because he knows your heart won't open for someone who remains closed. And because your boundary requires him to step up, it also allows him to experience a version of love that feels deeper than anything he's known before. A love that isn't built on fear or insecurity or dependency, but on mutual respect. A love that feels stable, not unpredictable. A love that feels empowering, not draining. A love that encourages both people to grow instead of shrinking to make the other comfortable. He falls in love with your strength, but he stays in love because of your softness. The softness he only gets access to because he earned it. Because he showed you with actions, not promises, that he could be trusted with your vulnerability. And that combination, your boundary and your softness, is what makes him feel like he found something extraordinary. He knows that you're not waiting for someone to save you. He knows you don't lean on a relationship to feel worthy. He knows you won't collapse into someone just because they show interest. And that makes the love he builds with you feel more meaningful, more intentional, more real, because he knows you could be alone, but you choose him, and that choice carries weight. Your boundary also helps him feel safe. Many people forget that men crave emotional safety too. They want to know that the woman they love will not lose herself, will not become resentful, will not depend on them for every ounce of happiness. They want to know they can trust her strength as much as her affection. And when he sees that you can stand on your own, he knows that being with you won't become a burden. It becomes a partnership. He sees that you are capable of being loyal without being self-sacrificial. He sees that you give love generously but never recklessly. He sees that you communicate your feelings without weaponizing them. He sees that you expect effort but aren't demanding. He sees that you value connection, but not at the cost of your peace. And that balance, love without self-loss, makes him feel like he finally found a woman he can build a life with. Not because she needs him, but because she chooses him from a place of strength. This boundary becomes the quiet force guiding everything. It teaches him how to love you. It teaches him how to honor you. It teaches him how to show up. It teaches him how to become the man he wants to be, not out of pressure, but out of inspiration. And in the process, it teaches him something even deeper, that the woman who refuses to lose herself is the woman he can love for a lifetime. And the more he feels the power of that realization, the more he begins to understand that this kind of connection isn't ordinary. It isn't something he can stumble into with just anyone. It isn't something he can replicate by chance or convenience. It's something he must protect, nurture, and show up for with intention. Because he knows that the kind of love born from mutual strength doesn't just happen. It's built through choices, through actions, through the courage to face oneself honestly. Your boundary becomes the mirror that reflects who he is and who he could be. He sees the difference between the man who coasted through relationships in the past and the man he becomes when he steps into something emotionally mature. He feels the shift from wanting connection to understanding what it truly means to create one. And in that space, he discovers a version of love that is deeper, softer, and more liberating than anything driven by insecurity or need. In your presence, he learns what devotion truly means. Not devotion built on fear of loss, but devotion inspired by admiration. He wants to invest because he sees how you invest in yourself. He wants to communicate because he sees how you express your truth without losing your grace. He wants to be consistent because he sees how consistency from you is not a strategy, but a lifestyle. You live your value, and in doing so, you lift the value of everything around you. This is what makes him fall in love slowly, steadily, and irreversibly. He falls in love with the way you don't rush anything, yet nothing feels stagnant. He falls in love with the way you don't cling, yet he feels deeply cared for. He falls in love with the way you don't try to impress him, yet he is constantly impressed. He falls in love with the way you move through the world with quiet confidence, a confidence that whispers, "I am enough," and anyone who stands beside me must reflect that truth. As he grows more connected to you, he starts protecting the relationship from the inside out. He becomes more mindful of his words because he knows communication with you is not a game of winning or losing. It's a place where honesty builds intimacy. He becomes more thoughtful with his choices because your reactions are not emotional explosions. They are measured, intentional, anchored in your own sense of worth. He feels safe to open up, not because he fears you walking away, but because he knows he can trust the space you cultivate. Your boundary does something extraordinary. It doesn't close him off. It opens him up. It creates emotional spaciousness. It shows him that love can be both grounding and freeing, that he can be fully himself without feeling smothered, that growth is welcomed, not feared, that vulnerability isn't a disappearing act waiting to happen, but a bridge that deepens connection. And through that, he learns how to love you in the way you deserve, not by guessing, not by following outdated scripts, but by observing your strength and stepping into his own. Because when a woman stands firm in her boundaries, she gives him something priceless, a clear map of how to love her, not in rigid rules, but in understanding, in presence, in mutual respect. He learns that love with you is not frantic, it's intentional. It's not based in insecurity, it's founded in admiration. It's not about ownership, it's about partnership. You aren't asking him to fill your life, you're inviting him to build a shared one where both of you expand rather than shrink. It's in the small moments where this becomes most clear, when you say no without guilt, when you express your needs without fear, when you step back instead of forcing closeness, when you choose silence over arguing, when you protect your peace instead of trying to win a point, when you walk away from anything that dishonors your value. Each act becomes a message, a reminder, a standard he rises to meet. Your boundary becomes the quiet pulse of the relationship. It sets the rhythm he follows. It keeps the pace steady and grounded. It prevents emotional chaos from defining the connection. And in that stability, he finds not boredom, but peace. And peace, especially for a man, is one of the most attractive, addictive experiences he can have with a woman. He starts realizing that relationships built on emotional turbulence fade quickly, but relationships built on emotional clarity last. He sees that passion without respect burns out, but passion fueled by admiration endures. And that admiration begins with how deeply you honor yourself. You don't have to lecture him about how to treat you. You don't have to repeat your standards over and over. You don't have to prove that you're worthy of love. He sees it in the way you carry yourself, in the way you move through the world, in the way your energy never lowers itself for anyone, not even him. He falls in love because your boundary tells him the truth about who you are, what you value, and what kind of life you're building. And that truth inspires something inside him that nothing else has, the desire to rise, to match, to exceed his own limitations. Your strength doesn't intimidate the right man. It awakens him. It draws him in. It makes him curious. It makes him humble. It makes him want to evolve. Because he sees that loving you requires being a man who is consistent, aware, emotionally present. And he wants to be that man, not because you demand it, but because your essence calls it out of him. Your boundary also refines the connection. It filters out the noise. It protects you from those who aren't ready, who aren't consistent, who aren't capable of loving at the level you deserve. Men who would have taken advantage of your softness don't get past the first layer. Men who only offer crumbs feel the distance you naturally create. Men who want you only when it's convenient realize quickly that you are not available for temporary comfort. Your boundary becomes a natural sorting mechanism, leaving only those with the capacity for real love. And when one of those men recognizes the value in front of him, he shows it. He becomes intentional about his words. He becomes reliable with his actions. He becomes mindful with his time. He becomes more generous with his heart, not because you force it, but because he feels it. The boundary draws out his loyalty, his devotion, his desire to invest deeply. He doesn't want to lose you because you aren't afraid to lose him. He doesn't take you for granted because you never take yourself for granted. He doesn't test your limits because he sees how clearly you live by them. He doesn't play games because he knows you don't entertain them. Instead, he steps into a version of himself that is fully aligned with the love he wants to give. Your boundary becomes the foundation of a relationship that grows stronger with time. It keeps the connection clean. It keeps communication clear. It keeps emotions stable. It keeps both of you aligned. And because of that, he feels something with you that he doesn't feel anywhere else. Long-term emotional safety. He begins to understand that this kind of connection doesn't fade. It evolves. It deepens. It strengthens. And the more he experiences that groundedness with you, the more he realizes that loving you is not a momentary feeling. It's a lifelong commitment he willingly chooses. Because a woman who refuses to abandon herself is the woman a man never wants to lose.